Hello, I am your host, Eric Tenkar, and this is Tavern Chat. It sounds like I'm really making a professional thing of this, doesn't it? Don't hold your breath. It ain't gonna get that good. Um, January 2019 is coming to a close. Just gonna throw a few things out there, and then move on to something new, more about podcasts. But not this exact podcast. But in the meantime, there we go. Going off in all directions. Focus. Today was literally catch up day. I was going through emails from January, emails that I have not read, have not even opened up my Google email in some cases. And if people were recipients of, what's our Christmas gifts earlier this month, hopefully now things are going in the right directions. Crossing fingers. I've learned that catching up is not easy. I'm not looking forward to how the federal government's going to catch up from this partial shutdown of 5 weeks, when my own partial shutdown of about 2.5 weeks of dealing with things like email, communications, and such literally took me, I don't know, another 2 weeks to get to that point where I could actually say I'm out from under. Not totally out from under. I still got packages to mail out. But at least the email aspect is pretty much caught up. So, I'm looking at the numbers of this podcast, and it's impressive. I can't really thank you all enough. December, excuse me, I believe December averaged 452 plays a day, which blew my mind. I think, previous high was somewhere around low 300s. And then January, we hit 472. And that's because of you all. That's because you're getting the word out. You're enjoying this podcast. And again, I can't thank you enough. The interviews are going strong. They're going well. I have found that there's a few conflicts with my convention, so some interviews are getting rescheduled. Sometimes life events come up on either side, which is really the reason why I don't post them up on a calendar or mention them ahead of time for the most part, because sometimes things just don't happen as you plan them. But even that, we've got stuff on the schedule through March. And when I say through March, through the end of March. So, and then I still have to hit other people I got to add to the list. James Bond, Glenn Hallstrom, some others. So we're getting there, but the interviews are going to go for a while. Those who don't know, today is part of that cold snap bullshit going on. So last night went down to, 5 degrees on my back porch, 4 or 5. Today was a high of like 16. So yeah, bitter cold. I'm still wearing a thermal shirt. If you've ever seen me at a convention, any time of the year, I wear short sleeves everywhere. It's cold. It's fucking cold. Now, what I do want to touch on, though, is that ENWorld, yes, I'm actually pulling an article from ENWorld, so hold your horses, did a survey of the top podcasts, top 10 RPG Talk podcasts. And they actually had about 10,000 responses, and that's a pretty good vote. I can't say it isn't. So what I find interesting now is the number one podcast on their vote, The Good Friends of Jackson Elias. It's Jackson Elias is a major character in Chaos's classic Call of Cthulhu campaign, Mass of Nyarlathotep. The investigators in the campaign are all good friends of his, and so are we. Sounds interesting. Never heard of it. So that leads me to believe. I'm not saying it's happened this way, but just like folks like James Raggy know how to manipulate influencers in their community to get things voted for, like things with the Ennies. Again, James doesn't put out shit. He puts out quality stuff, but James knows how to work the system. The good friends of Jackson Elias, it sounds like a campaign of Call of Cthulhu, yes, but it's a podcast about, I don't know, episodes include making combat more interesting. Horror gaming in the modern day, yes, it's a very, it's niche within a niche. And I'm surprised that that would be the number one, but hey, mobilize your social media and you too. Number two, the Grognard Files. I've heard about the Grognard Files. Haven't had a chance to listen. Of course, they got back together in 2010 to play Call of Cthulhu Mass of Nyarlathotep for 3 years. So maybe there is a theme here. Maybe the Dark Ones are manipulating the vote. But no, it's great to see, Grognard Files comes in at number two. Fear the Boot. Fear the Boot's been around forever. I stopped listening to it a couple of years ago. Doesn't mean it wasn't good, but I just didn't enjoy the episodes anymore. But they're up there. Ken and Robin talk about stuff. If you like a scripted podcast, it's really good. If you don't like scripted podcasts, it's really bad. Happy Jacks RPG. Happy Jacks is probably the RPG podcast that I found when I started finding podcasts. And yeah, it's pretty much well done. Not all the topics are going to appeal to everybody, but they like Savage Worlds a lot. At least last I listened to it, but it's tight. I can see it making a top 10 list. What would the Smart Party do? Not something that I listen to because it's pretty much Rob Schwab, Satine Phoenix, Jonathan Tweet. Oh, and Russ Morrissey from ENWorld. But it's a bit too officially for me. Dragon Talk, which is official, comes in at number 7. Gaming and BS. Gaming and BS should be really up there. And it's OSR. So far, top 8, 2 are pretty much OSR themed. Interesting. System Mastery. Don't know it. I'm not saying it isn't good. Just don't know it. And then Fear the Black Dragon. Oh, sorry, Fear of a Black Dragon. Now we have another one that lists an OSR from the Gauntlet, a podcast network that focuses on indie RPGs, story games, and the OSR. Now, my one question on this is podcast network. I don't quite get that. And the link to their site is dead from ENWorld. That's good. It just probably means they put a bad link in. Yeah, they put a bad link in from that one. They put a bunch of jumbled shit. But those are the top 10 according to ENWorld. And what I find surprising is that a number of these have, let's see, OSR as an influence. And you wouldn't generally get that from the general feeling at ENWorld towards the OSR. I haven't seen it to be generally happy, joy. Well, I guess the OSR generally likes to hang out in other places, but those are your top 10. Are they my top 10? No. Should I give you my top 10? Not today. But these are podcasts you could check out. You might find something worthwhile. I think the most controversial one on this list is probably Ken and Robin talk about stuff, because from what I understand, from my experience, is you either love it or you hate it. I listened to it for a while, and the initial episodes I listened to were actually pretty interesting. Even Rach enjoyed them, but then you kind of realize they were on script, and it was less interesting. That could just be me. Doesn't have to be you. All right, folks. Tomorrow, February. Woohoo. Tomorrow night, I will be on the evening equivalent of the RPG Breakfast Club, which is being called Coast to Coast, RPG Coast to Coast. And I will be on the show at 9 p.m. Eastern, February 1st. And the guests are going to be Douglas Cole, Pex, my main man at the Discord server, and the one that schedules all the interviews, just so you all know. Power behind the throne. Bad Mike from Frog Out Games in North Texas, myself, and Carl Heil, Wild Games Productions, the Save or Die podcast. So, if you need to hear more of me, there's your opportunity. All right, folks. As always, be safe, be healthy. God bless. All right, as well. I will talk with you all tomorrow. Later.